The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel, after a long absence, too long, is Joanne Mercier. Hi, Joanne.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's been over a month, so it's good to have you guys back. And Father Cory Sticha, welcome back.
Well, glad to be back. That darn real life getting in the way all the time.
Exactly. So, folks, one thing I want to mention is this is the 50th episode of Secrets of Technology. We've been going for just over a year now. So, and we are very grateful to all of you who listen, who download the show. It's because you download the show that we keep doing it. I mean, really, if it was just us, we love to talk technology, but we wouldn't have to make a podcast to do that.
Exactly.
We do this for you, and we appreciate that you download it, you listen, that you write feedback, you send us suggestions, and you share the podcast with others. And speaking of suggestions, the topic of this show comes from a listener suggestion. Someone wanted to hear us do a side-by-side comparison, like we did with iPhone versus Android before, with Joanne and Father Cory. This time we're doing a side-by-side comparison of 1Password and LastPass. So that's the topic of today's show, and let's start off with password manager. So why a password manager? What does it do for us? Do either of you have a reason that you would give to somebody for why they should choose and use a password manager?
Because password 12345 is not a good password.
Right.
It's security. I mean, it really is. Passwords are designed to keep your information secure, keep your accounts secure. And it's, as every article about password managers will point out, we, by our human nature, cannot make and remember good passwords.
Right. We tend to reuse them. We create a pattern. You can't I have hundreds and hundreds of passwords. Every site I go to has a unique password. That's the best way to do it. That way, if one gets compromised, that's the only site that gets compromised. And I make them secure, which means long and random. And I can't remember that. So, and then you only have to remember the one password that opens up the vault that has all the other passwords.
And you're never, ever going to be able to have that little notebook that you've written them all in with you at all times.
Right. And frankly, you should have it with you at all times if you write it down, because if you leave that notebook anywhere, chances are, I can't tell you how many times I've walked up to people's desks and I've seen passwords, sticky notes on the monitor, in the drawer, under the blotter on the desk. I mean, come on, folks. Everyone knows that you pull out that slide to return on the side of the desk, and it's taped there. These are not hiding places. We all know that they're there.
Well, and it's when I think I've mentioned it before on this podcast, but I know I've mentioned on others, is before I was entered the seminary, I was a sysadmin, Unix system administrator. And I had 20 servers I had to be responsible for, which meant I had the root passwords for 20 servers. And for me to remember all of these was impossible. And of course, we had to change them every 3 months or so by Air Force security policy.
Yeah.
And so we had the little cheat sheet, business card sized cheat sheet that we would put in our wallets and had to pull out. I would have loved to have had a password manager at that time. Right. Where I could have just copied and pasted and never even remembered what the passwords were.
And nowadays you can have dongles, hardware dongles that are like a physical key that can substitute for a password or take the place of a password and that sort of thing. But those might become more common in the future. And we might actually come to a time when we don't need passwords per se, but we're not there yet.
No, not at all. And I just don't think the human mind can keep track of every single password that you need for every single place you go anymore. Everybody wants a password. And whether or not there's two-factor authentication, so if that's the case, then you got to have two things you have to know.
Right.
We just don't have that capability anymore to remember. In the old days, it was you needed it for email, you needed it for your bank. That was it. Now it's every single thing.
Yeah.
And you should have, we've talked about this before, so we're only just quickly reviewing it, but you should have a different password for every website, even for websites that you don't think are important, because once you start reusing passwords, then it gets a habit, and like I said, when one gets broken, maybe not through your own fault, but through that website's poor security practices, then they can get at other sites and start building a profile on you that helps them get more and more access to your private information and the mother load, which usually is your financial information, or or if they're going after something else, your health information or something like that. But you don't want them to let them get access to that. So that's why Password Manager. We're talking about LastPass and 1Password. We're not talking about others. There are others, Dashlane, and there's several others. But I chose 1Password and LastPass because A, they're the two most popular. And B, they're the ones we know best, right?
Yeah. True.
Yeah. So, but I think if you choose one of these two, you're getting a top password manager. And that may be the bottom line, if I could put that first, is whichever you choose, they're both great. They both will do the job, and they're both well-designed, and they will store your password. So
it's kind of like the difference between using Microsoft Word and OpenOffice.
Right.
99% of the people who are going to use these tools are just going to use the basic word processing, and either one will work just fine. Well, that's the same thing with LastPass and 1Password. And I've used both. I used 1Password back in its old way. We'll talk about that.
Yep.
But, and I use LastPass now. They both do the same exact things for 99% of people.
Yes.
Yeah, they do. But I have to always, because I have a partner in all of this who is not as up on technological things as I am. I have to be careful that I pick something that he can use and pick up without having to sit there and go, why is this so frustrating? I don't understand it.
Right.
So that's why I will choose one or the other based on, if I'm sharing it with him, how he reacts to it.
And we'll get into some of the details of how they differ and why some people might be more comfortable with one than the other, people who are not tech savvy. So let's start off with what they have in common. So they both will create secure passwords for you. That's one thing that they both do. And you can put in a recipe. You can say, I want it to be, all my passwords to be so many digits or numbers long, so many characters long. I want it to be, you can have them where they're just random numbers, letters, and even symbols, and how many of each. You can have them be random strings of dictionary passwords, if, like 4 random words strung together, so that they both do that. They both offer secure vaults of one kind or another, where it's a vault that holds all the passwords, and you just need to remember the one password that unlocks the vault.
And the master password.
The master password. That's right. And then they both offer online storage of passwords, so in the cloud, so that you can access them and keep them up to date across all your devices, and even share them with the trusted people and that sort of thing. So those are things they all have in common.
One thing, I mentioned 1Password that I used it before, and when I used it, they didn't have the online storage the way they do now.
Yeah.
Right.
Originally, it was all local storage. So you would run the 1Password app on your device, whether it is your Mac, your Windows, whatever.
Yep.
And then it would sync you to like your phone or whatever through Dropbox.
Yes. That's
you would
how
have it so it would
started,
save to Dropbox. Well, they've since changed it now, as I understand it, where it does do the online storage as LastPass does, where you go to lastpass.com and you can log in and go through that.
Right. Well, and we can get into a little bit of that, but yes, they have their own servers that are highly encrypted that do all of the synchronizing in the cloud there, and even allow you to access your vault through a web browser. They both do that, and that's right. That's preferable to the Dropbox way, which there's also the danger of corruption because they don't control the syncing in Dropbox. You could still do it. It's still allowed, actually. They've grandfathered that in. Some people prefer that. They prefer to have, like, there's some people whose needs are much even more secure than most of us, like lawyers and doctors, who prefer to have more control over that vault and its syncing, and they synchronize it without putting it on their servers. But that may be a reason to choose 1Password. That's as we get into it. is 1Password allows that local vault that you manage the syncing and storage of, whereas LastPass is in the cloud. And so we can get into that. In fact, let's talk about that. So that's under the category of security and reliability. LastPass only stores in the cloud. Am I correct? There isn't a local file on your computer.
It only stores in the cloud, but as I understand it, your password, your master password, does not go unencrypted. What happens is it's stored in the cloud. All your passwords are stored in the cloud, encrypted. So if you went to LastPass Central and went to their server and looked at your account, it would be absolute garbage. It would be encrypted noise. But when you do your password, it sends the encrypted version of that password up, makes the match, and allows it to decrypt.
Okay. Whereas one
Or let me rephrase that. It makes the key that allows the decryption on your end. Sorry. Let me be clear about this. There is no clear channel of your passwords with LastPass. That your encrypted data comes down, you type in your password, it goes clear on your computer.
Right. It's never unencrypted in the cloud.
Correct.
Whereas 1Password, the vault is in the cloud and it's encrypted. It syncs to a file on your device, whether it's your computer or phone, where it sits encrypted until you enter the password. In both cases, your password, unless you're accessing it through a browser, your password is never leaving your device.
Correct.
So is one of those preferable to the other? I mean, is there an advantage to one or the other of those? What do you think?
Only offline, in my opinion.
If you need the passwords offline.
Yes.
Yeah. Because you can't get at LastPass unless you're online.
On the desktop. Now on tablets and phones, on mobile, you can sync them locally.
Oh, you can. Okay.
There is an offline mode in LastPass for apps, but not like we'll talk about this, but I use the Firefox extension for my LastPass, and you can't just say I want offline.
Okay.
At least I have not seen an option for that. So.
Okay. All right. And do you? So I should have started off. Father Cory, you use LastPass now. Joanne, what do you use right now?
I use LastPass.
Okay. And I'm a 1Password user. I have been from the beginning. So for going on 10 years or more at this point. So.
Well, I had tried 1Password early, like Father Cory, and there was something about it that I wasn't connecting with. So when Leo Laporte, of course, who now has the LastPass Studios,
right?
Let's see where that's going. Started talking about it. I went for the free trial, and it was the easiest thing I could think of, and showed my husband, and he thought it was easy, and that's where we went.
All right. So we should also talk about the account recovery. What happens if you lose your master password, or God forbid something happens to you and you have your survivors need to get into your password accounts and they're not already sharing it, say. So 1Password has something that's called the Emergency Access Kit, and it's essentially a piece of paper that prints out with a QR code, and you handwrite in. It doesn't print it for you. You handwrite in your not just your master password, but also a secret key that is the key, the master key to your account. So whoever your survivor is will need both of those things, or they could use the QR code and an app, whether it's a desktop app or a phone tablet app, to unlock it as well. So, in which case, that piece of paper is your lifeline. Put it somewhere safe. Put it in a safety deposit box in a fireproof vault. Maybe put it in two of them, but that's your gold standard there. What about LastPass? I understand LastPass has a bereavement or a death survivor sort of access that they allow. What do you know about that?
I haven't used it, although I was reading about it as we were kind of doing research for this episode. That you can basically set up a person. I could say Don Bettinelli and Joanne are going to be my emergency contact, that if something happens to me, they can click a button on LastPass and say, I need access to this account. It'll start a timer. It'll send me a message. It'll start a timer. I think you can specify how long, or there's a certain period. And if I don't respond in that time, LastPass will let them into my account.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you can set it from anywhere from a couple of hours to like months, years, or whatever.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So
but go ahead.
But no, I was gonna say, but yeah, if I just fall off the face of the earth, or I'm in an accident, and they need to get into my account, I can say, okay, let them go ahead and do it.
Okay. That's pretty interesting. And it's a nice feature. I like that idea that it's more than just having to have this piece of paper. If something happens to that piece of paper, we're out of luck. This is that sounds a little better. And 1Password has something, again, in the security and reliability. They have something called travel mode, which I kind of like. This is relatively new. So some people who have to cross borders a lot, in and out of countries, get a little worried about, local law enforcement, whether American law enforcement or more often foreign law enforcement, secret police, etc., getting access to their vaults. And even though it's encrypted, sometimes they can be put in a position of, give us your password, or you go to jail, or we're not letting you out, or worse. So what 1Password does is has a travel mode where it allows you to designate certain vaults that are hidden while traveling. It deletes them off your devices so that they're not even there. They don't exist for them to be cracked. And then when you get to where you're going, you can reactivate them. Like when you're at your hotel wherever you're getting to, or that sort of thing. That's a pretty good feature. You could do this manually. It's much trickier beforehand. It was a little dangerous because you could accidentally delete your passwords. But this makes it a feature of it, and it recognizes the reality of the world we live in, which is kind of nice. Right. LastPass has something for traveling too, though, doesn't it?
I haven't used it either. If they do.
So apparently they have you can restrict access to certain countries as designated prior. So the LastPass can only be used in, say if you're an American, you're only going to be in America, you don't anticipate ever traveling to Europe or anywhere else, you could say LastPass can only be accessed from within the United States. That way, if someone gets access to it, so if you're traveling, you can't get into it, which can be a problem. If you're doing the traveling, but it means that if someone cracks your LastPass from Brazil or Russia or China or wherever, they can't get in because it's locked out of that country. So that's a nice function there.
Yeah, that would be. I could definitely see some uses for that. If nothing else, just because there might be accounts that you can't do from different places,
right?
Just because you're not, whatever reason. So,
and that's the sort of thing I think I would leave on all the time. That geographic restriction, because that's like another line of defense for your password vault. Right. So something else to consider is who owns the companies. Log Me In. LastPass and 1Password. Who owns those companies? That might be a concern. Who has a vested interest in the security? LastPass is owned by the company called Log Me In, based here in Boston. They own a couple different companies. Log Me In is a remote access software company. They allow you to remotely control computers that you've set up for doing that. I've used their software in the past, and they're actually local here in Boston, which is they're a pretty big company. 1Password is independent. It's a Canadian company, Agile Software, so they're located in Canada. That's subject to Canadian law, and that's something to keep in mind when you're doing business with tech companies. Where are they located? Where are the servers located? Yep. Whose laws are they subject to? So that's something to consider. I think we're still friendly with Canada, so I'm not sure. I don't think that's a problem.
Last I checked.
Yeah. So
hopefully,
any other things in security and reliability we should think about besides that?
Oh. Now there have been a couple of cases in the past with LastPass where there were information did leak. I don't think there was enough information to actually be a compromise, but one thing I will say, if you go read the stories, immediately they Log Me In, LastPass, they hardened up their security. They went through and they redid their security and they made it tighter. And then, so they as soon as a loophole was found, they closed it.
Should mention Steve Gibson is a well-known cybersecurity expert.
Yes.
He has a show on the Twit network, and he famously asked to review the source code for LastPass, and he was given access to the source code. He reviewed it and declared it sufficient for his needs. Which, if Steve Gibson has some pretty, when you have a spectrum of security paranoia, Steve is at the top, which I give him more credit for.
He's one step off of air gap networking for security paranoia, which if you're not familiar with that, or sneaker net is the other term you might hear. Literally, if you want to get from one computer to the other, you take the file out of the one file, out of the computer, and physically walk it over to the other computer and plug it in.
Air gapped. I think only the White House has higher encryption security.
Yeah,
but
so if he says it's sufficient, I would. That's part of the reason why I use it. Let's just put it that way.
I would feel assured. Yeah, 1Password. I think there have been occasions in the past where people have questioned that the potential for a problem with that they've quickly fixed. Neither one has ever had a case where, as far as we know, a case where someone has broken into a vault or gotten a hold of a password other than getting a hold of someone's master password. Neither have ever had a decryption problem.
And I think we need to be realistic that these two managers are really good at what they do, but they're not perfect.
Yes.
Nope.
Okay.
Nothing
so
is.
we have to have So if you're really at the Steve Gibson level of paranoia, then you're going to set up your tech life accordingly.
Right.
I like the fact to have a password manager, basically for a simple reason that I can't remember them all.
Yes.
Right.
And I want to have some secure passwords. But I have also noticed, and I don't know if this is too early to bring it up, that there are some sites lately where I will use, generate my password, LastPass, and the site comes back to me and says, not sufficient. You're not going by our rules.
Yeah.
So I have to go back and look and say, so what are your rules again? You want 12 exclamation points, 4 stars, and 2 words that have nothing to do with each other?
Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff too. So people, websites and companies are creating their own rules, whether they fit sometimes these managers or not.
And well, the nice thing though is, again, both LastPass and 1Password let you justify it or go with those rules. So if they say you must have minimum 8 to 12 characters, which is pretty low end, frankly, must have, number, lowercase, uppercase, symbols, you can tell them to do that. If they don't want symbols, which is even worse, you can tell it to do that. If they want 8 to 5,000, you can tell them to generate a file. I can pretty guarantee you could probably get both these tools to generate a 5,000 character password.
Oh, yeah. Right. But we as tech people understand that we don't have a problem with it. We move on. People who are not as savvy, and I use my husband again as an example, will come up against that wall and go, well, this password manager is no good. It's not doing what I want it to do. That's where people get frustrated and go back to 1, 2, 3, ABC monkey.
I wish that both password managers would do a better job of hand-holding people through that process, through the password generation process, or at least give the option of it.
Now, that is one thing that LastPass is starting to do in a way. They have the ability now with about 70 or 75 sites like Amazon, like Gmail, like Outlook, and things like that, the common sites where you can make it so that if you already have an account in there, so I've already got my LastPass entry in there for Gmail, I can hit generate new or change password, automatically change password.
That's right. That's actually something LastPass has that 1Password doesn't. I like the idea. And if there's ever a breach, sometimes these sites will say, "Oh, a bunch of our passwords have been compromised. Everyone has to change their password," which is a hassle. And so what happens? So we happens for in the past so far, you got to go to the site. You have to click on the forgot my password, or it'll pop up and say you have to change your password. And you go through the whole rigmarole and update and all that sort of stuff. Whereas, like you say, it'd be a lot easier if I could just log into my password manager and say, change this password and this here without having to go to the site. That would be nice. One of the things that I run into that drives me crazy is sites that say you can't have more than, say, 20 characters or 15 characters. Why? Why is your server space so precious that you can't let me have 20? It's less secure.
They had to make it. Having seen some of the development side, I guarantee you they at some point made the decision of we need a password field in the database. Right. So we're going to make it this long.
It was a programming decision.
That's time you'll see sites where you're not allowed to use special characters. because they implemented their username and password scheme in the database so badly that it can actually corrupt the database if they allowed you to do that.
Yeah, they haven't escaped out the characters, which is a programming term. But one of the things that I would like both password managers to be able to do is to let me designate, okay, use special characters, but not these, or just choose from these. That would be a huge improvement for me, because I encounter that all the time. So, all right. So that's security and reliability. Very good. We should probably just talk briefly about ease of setup. They're both really good at setup, initial setup.
Yes.
I haven't done it, like I said, in over a decade, but for myself. But I've helped other people set up, and it's really a really simple process. It probably could stand, like Joanne, like you said, stand to be even a little easier for people who are not techies. There's still a little hand-holding that needs to happen, but that's both. I'm not sure either one has an advantage. We'll
talk here shortly about cross-platform, how you can use these tools, but the fact that they have browser plugins and things like that really makes that a lot easier. Yeah. But just, again, I used 1Password back when it was a standalone program and it was all local with Dropbox. That was a pain to set up. When 1Password first came out, it was a pain to set up.
Yeah.
LastPass, especially moving from 1Pass to LastPassword, being able to export from one, import into the other, made it even easier. Yes. If you've already got a file that has username and passwords for everything, whether it is going from a different password manager or just something you've made yourself, both these tools make it very easy to just import and go.
Okay. Let's talk about the cross-platform support then. Yep. Both have Mac, iOS, Android, and Linux versions that native apps. 1Password also has a dedicated Windows app and a Chrome OS app, which I've tried to use the Chrome OS app on a Chromebook. Not great, let me just say. But what is on Chromebook? That's not a native Gmail or Google app. LastPass does support Windows and Chrome through browser extensions. Both also do browser extensions and apps. So, so the browser extension is important because that's usually where you're going to be using your passwords. You're logging into Amazon or Facebook or whatever, and you have a key. You can either hit something on the toolbar, or you hit a key combination. It pops up, and you enter in your master password, and it will automatically fill in your username and password for that site and log you in. That's the basic version of that. And that's pretty. And both of them support pretty much every browser that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I use Chrome and Safari.
Yeah.
So it does, but it will get a little persnickety. I had one instance, and it could just have been the program, the website, but I would put my because of course you'll see the little symbol and it'll fill it in, and then I went inside of the program, and because I had to fill in other places, the symbol was showing up.
Oh, okay.
But only in the Chrome browser. So I had to not use that particular website program on Chrome. I had to use it in Safari, where it wouldn't do that. So it must be something in their programming fields that makes it pop up.
I'm sure it was something on the app, the website's bad design. And that's one thing you'll run into once in a while is sometimes they will design websites to be pretty, and it will break something like LastPass, and it'll affect about anything that would try to work with the tool, because they're using like a non-standard field for entering in your username and password. Right. But it looks so pretty because it animated and it moves and it does all these. Yeah.
I often encounter
the disclaimer. The disclaimer is it's software for Roman Catholic Church use. So
right. Usually, I often encounter sites where, like for example, I tell it to autofill and it fills the password but not the username for whatever reason.
Yes.
Because the programmers of websites have to label things correctly. That's for what LastPass and 1Password to figure out what it should put where. So that's one of the challenges that these password managers face, is working with millions of different websites. That's the problem.
And again, it's one of those, the vast majority, 95 to 99% of the websites you're going to find, it's going to work flawlessly.
Yes.
You go to the site, you click login, you drop down your LastPass or 1Password, you hit the one you want, you're in. Done.
Now, 1Password on iOS, and I think LastPass too, work with the new iOS 13 password manager features, which is great. so much better than it was. So when you come to a password field, either on a website or in an app, which I would love to get on the Mac, frankly, because it doesn't do it automatically on the Mac. But if it's in an app, it will offer to fill in the email address or the username, usually an email address, and then it will also fill in the password. And then if you have multiple logins for the same site for different reasons, you can choose from among them. So nice. And if you have Face ID, like my phone does, or Touch ID for some phones, it's so fast, so good. Don't even have to remember your master password to do that. So really nice ease of use. Have you used LastPass how is LastPass on iOS, Joanne, for you?
Again, I've got face recognition now on both an iPad, and I just got a 11, iPhone 11, and it's been beautiful. I just look at it and there it is. It's all in. It goes. And
on Android, Father Cory?
Same thing. Actually, Android had that capability about a year or two, the autofill on both websites and apps for about a year or two before iOS did, because Android had the ability where LastPass could come up over the front of whatever screen you're looking at and have the information. But when I've got the Pixel 4 XL, which has the Face ID, the face recognition for Android. It was one of the first phones to have that, and LastPass was one of the first apps to support that. So now it's same thing. I bring up something, it's like, oh, fill in with LastPass. Click the little button that says I want to fill this with LastPass. It does the face recognition. There it is. Tap it. Done. Same kind of deal.
So much better.
It's just so easy to handle this kind of stuff. Once in a while, you have to do no, that's not the right one. Let me search. Yes, for this app, use this one. And one nice thing I've noticed LastPass will do is sometimes if you're using an app that is not expecting you to use with that password, it'll ask, are you sure you want to do this? Fill, don't fill.
So, it's amazing how quickly we forget how bad things used to be, but things are much better using passwords on mobile devices. That's for sure. So both are really good. If you really want a Windows app, maybe 1Password might be something you'd lean toward, just to put it that way. But otherwise, most people who use Windows and LastPass, I've found, are pretty happy with just doing it through the browser.
Yeah, I would be surprised if even like the Mac. I've not used the Mac LastPass. I didn't even realize they had an app for Mac. I just use the browser, so it works for me. Because you can get to your vault through it and everything.
Yes, and most web apps are really good these days. Almost like if there's a choice between a web app and a native app, a lot of people are preferring the web app, frankly. All right, so let's talk about using this, whether with a team, like people you work with, or with your family. I have a family plan for mine that I share with my wife and my mom. I'll put a pin in that for a second, why I share it with my mom. And I used to have one for parishes that I worked at. We had 1Password for teams. They're often people will need to share passwords. Like we have one bank account and I need to get into it. My wife needs to get into it. Things like that. I also want her to be able to get into, say, my social media accounts if something were to happen to me, for that sort of thing. And just to make it easier, my mom, so just to back up, so there, 1Password for families has a website, and there's a dedicated address, and you set it up, whatever it is. You can put your family name, smith.1password.com. It has all the special login information, and more than just your password to get in, you also need a special key that you get when setting it up to get in there. So they make it ultra secure, and then you can manage users, and you have a certain number of users in a family. I'm not even close to using all of them, and I have 5 kids, but they're not all on devices yet, so I'm not using them. But it allows you to, set up new people. It's really good. It's set up vaults, share vaults, all that sort of stuff from within it. By default, there's one vault, a personal vault for each individual, and there's a shared vault, which is for everyone on the team or family. Now, I don't necessarily want my elderly mom to have my passwords to my bank account and all that other stuff that I share with Melanie. So I have set up actually a separate vault for just me and Melanie. So you can set up additional shared vaults so that just Melanie and I share that. And then my mom has access to the main shared vault, which really doesn't have anything in it. And then I've shared my mom's personal vault with myself so that I can always get into her accounts if, God forbid, something should happen. So that's how I've set it up. But there's other ways. For teams, they have additional features for business plans that businesses can have a sysadmin. They can set up rules for password changes and all sorts of things like that. I think that's a little beyond our scope today, but there's lots of stuff there. How about for LastPass for teams or families? What do they do?
Well, LastPass, Kevin and I are both in a family account. We're both administrators, so we can go in. I don't think he knows how to yet, but the way I've set it up is so if I have accounts that are work accounts, I've tried to name them so and put them in one folder so he knows you don't have to worry about those. And I could leave them out of it, but just in case something happens to me and he needs to turn that information over to somebody, he has access to it. It's very simple. I've thought about trying to bring it to work to see if they could use it at work, but we have people who still aren't sure about how to use certain things. They all got to learn Slack. I'm not so sure they'd learn a password manager just yet. So, but it's something to consider because, we're all, at least where I am now, we're all on a dedicated server. And if something happens if somebody gets into that server, they can just go through all of our accounts, go through all of our computers, I should say. So this is something that I would want to bring slowly. But the way it works is everything is there for him. He can see what the name is, what the account is, and he has total access to it. And it's only the two of us. When you have families, I'm sure you want certain, like your mother, you don't want her to see certain things, and you probably wouldn't want your kids to either.
Right. I don't want them to have the bank account.
Right. They don't want, or the credit card. You don't want them in the credit card. It all looks like little index cards on the screen.
Okay. Does 1Password, does LastPass have separate vaults where you can segregate out areas?
Yeah, you can. Oh yeah, you can do that. Where you can have people share them. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah, like I have an SQPN 1Password vault that's just SQPN stuff, that sort of thing. You mentioned, we'll get to that actually. I want to talk. Actually, I didn't put it on the list. Let's talk about it here. One of the things you can do is you can use it to store things like credit cards.
Yes.
So that when you're shopping online, you can auto-fill credit card information and address information and some other things. So it does do that, and it keeps that stuff secure. You can also store other information there. I have all of our social security numbers in there. So whenever I have to fill out forms for the kids, I got that. All of our health insurance numbers are all in there. You could put your passport, including images. You can store images in there. So these vaults can be more than just for passwords. You can store I have all kinds of things in 1Password that are highly sensitive, very private, that I wouldn't want to be out anywhere, but are secure behind this wall. So that's one of the things I like about it.
Right.
LastPass, I assume, can do that sort of thing?
Yes, same thing. But the only thing I'm using it right now for is Wi-Fi passwords, because I have the router and the modem Wi-Fi passwords. They're there, the guest account, the home account. But that's where we part ways, because I'm at that level of security, just maybe a little bit below Steve Gibson, where I'm not putting that stuff anywhere but in my pocket, in my safety deposit box. Kevin has a key. and that's it's just the way we operate.
It's all about your comfort level, right?
Exactly. But I suggest it to people who want to have it all in one place, because you can.
Yeah, it's one nice thing is, because you can do notes, you can do addresses, you can back up your entire contact list to like LastPass or 1Password, I assume, as well. Your credit card information for autofill, it'll do autofill with credit cards. You can do that through it. One thing I like to use, I use the secure notes especially for, is those stupid websites that still insist on doing Q&A as two-factor authentication.
Yes.
Which I'm going to say this out here, and I hope there's some security person that hears this. That is not true two-factor authentication. That is, you may as well just not even have a password.
Well,
if
just
you've got
ask
those
Sarah
stupid...
Palin, right? Remember that how her email got cracked that time because it asked for things like, where were you born? Like,
yes.
And that's all on Wikipedia for some people.
Yeah, it's just that is not security. Banks need to get rid of that garbage. But anyways, my rant is over on that. You can store those questions and answers in the notes. I've done that. Yeah. If you have things like Steam,
can I go further on that? Actually, with what I do is I store the questions, those security questions in there, and then I generate a password as the answer. And so it's a truly random information. So now it becomes more secure. Now it's just a second password.
Second password. No, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
But you can store those all in the secure notes so it doesn't pop up on your, when you're trying to log in.
Yeah.
I'm writing this all down, gentlemen. I'm writing it all down.
That's
those if you use like
Steam?
the Steam video game service, they give you recovery codes. Apple does too, by the way. Your Apple account, you get a recovery key, backup codes for Dropbox, things like that. Mm-hmm. There's so many different, things like, this is something simple. I can never remember the taxpayer ID for my parish. Yep. I've got that saved in there.
Here's another one.
Anything and everything.
Take a screenshot of QR codes for two-factor authentication. Store those in there as well.
Yeah.
So that if you ever need to regenerate your QR code, say the app gets damaged on your phone or something like that, now you have that. You could just regenerate it using that.
That's a great idea.
So
I mean, there's so many of these things that you can do that just makes your life so much easier and makes it so much better when you're working with some of these sites and these tools that are
and give you peace of mind, right? It gives you some peace of mind knowing this stuff is stored, safely.
Now, see, you're giving me food for thought now, because I put a lot of that stuff you're talking about in Evernote and have for years.
Right.
So now if I can transfer it to this, because I'll be honest, if something should happen to my husband, I'm going to have to use a LastPass for somebody else.
Right.
To get, and I will finally have to put it in one place.
Right.
And so that's good.
And Evernote is somewhat secure, but is nowhere near as secure.
Right.
And so that would be better. There are lots of things you can store. Anything like anything that can be generated as a PDF or even a CSV file, you can store, or an image, you can store in 1Password and in LastPass. So think about things like that need to be stored like that. Like your taxes, for instance, would be another thing you could do.
Yep.
All right. So I don't want to go too long. There's lots to talk about. We talked a little bit about using it in a web browser to log into websites. Both of them work pretty well with a key combination in your browser. In most browsers, most will automatically detect when you're creating a new account or a new login. Again, some of that depends a little bit on the websites being programmed properly. And then I know 1Password will detect when you're entering a new password into something you already have an account for. LastPass does that too.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
And it offers to update. And it will, and so that works pretty well, and it will save the username and password. Usually, 1Password once in a while, again, because of the way the particular website might be programmed, doesn't, like, for instance, grab the username and store it. So then I have to manually go in and store the
and they might not have named it as username. They might have named it as email login or something like, or 1 2 3 4 5. Enter your email password here. Something like that. And
some bad programming practice.
Exactly.
So, anything else we need to say about using it in a web browser that's distinctive about one or the other? 1Password or LastPass?
One nice thing at least about LastPass is all this stuff we've been talking about, the secure passwords and your passports and your photos and all that, you can get all of that just through the little drop down on LastPass in the browser. You don't need to go to the vault. If you want to, though, it's a one-click. It's two clicks. You click on the icon, you click Go to Vault, and it pops right up in another tab.
Same with 1Password. Yep.
I think I have to mention a web browser because it goes right into phone, tablet. In iOS, because iOS has their own generator for passwords and password store, you have to be careful which one you're choosing.
Yes.
Because I've had my husband save them to the iOS or to the web browser through Mac
iCloud
instead of
passwords.
LastPass.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's important I think there's a way you can shut the iOS one off, but right now I haven't done that for him because if he captures it somewhere, it's a good thing.
That's right.
But
Well,
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a logical point to think about with all these browsers. They all have their own keychains now,
Right.
whether it is using
Google.
like the Apple, the Mac OS or Google or Firefox, or whatever. They all have their own password managers. They're usually the ones in browsers aren't as good as the ones we're talking about, though.
right.
So you might have to turn those off in your particular browser.
I've done it to Chrome already because Chrome kept asking me, "Do you want to save this password?" No, not by you. So
Right. We did talk a little bit already about using both on your phone or tablet, both in the websites and in apps. So I think we've covered that. They both will create and store two-factor authentication keys correctly. Correct.
I've not used the LastPass version of that. I use Google Authenticator on Android. Is what I use. So
some people will recommend that you keep them separate. If you put them both eggs in one basket, if someone breaks into your vault, your password manager vault, then they have the keys to the kingdom. On the other hand, if someone is capable of breaking into that, my personal level of comfort is if they can break into that vault, then things are already at a level of that's out of control. So
exactly.
I actually use both. I use Authy on my phone, which is an authenticator app, but I also simultaneously put it in to 1Password. What that does is when I'm logging in on a browser with 1Password, I will do the key combination, autofill the password, then it will enter, go to the next screen where it wants that two-factor code. Well, 1Password is already knows that I have a two-password code for that website. It puts that into the copy buffer so that I can just paste there, and then I log in. One of the nice things that 1Password does is because it puts stuff in the copy buffer, after a certain period of time, I think 15 or 30 seconds, it puts what was in the copy buffer back in and wipes out the username, password, and two-factor authentication from the copy buffer, so that I have a clipboard manager where I can look at my last 30 things I've copied and pasted, but passwords never show up in there because it keeps it secure, which is really nice. I assume LastPass has something similar.
Does very similar. It'll wipe the copy buffer as well. Actually, I think, of course, now with the newer ways that it does it, it's not actually using copy buffer. It's doing it direct.
Right. Actually, I think you're right. You're right. The two-factor code that 1Password does is in the copy buffer, so it's still doing it with that and switching back and forth.
Right.
All right. So let's talk about pricing. LastPass has a free tier, correct?
Yep.
Yes, it does.
What do you get for that free tier with LastPass?
You get, the only thing you don't get is you get the authenticator, you get the security challenges and the generator and the whole night. You just don't get the emergency access, which I think is, I think anybody should have the emergency access.
Right.
And there's something about encrypted storage that you don't get on that either.
You could store up to a gigabyte of files. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you get that. So I'm kind of looking through here. Like, it allows most everything you're going to use. I think it does limit the number of devices you're allowed to use. It does, like you said, does limit sharing to some extent. Share. You can do one-to-one sharing, but you can't do one-to-many sharing. Right. And actually, I think they have changes. I'm looking at LastPass now at their pricing tiers, and they've added now access on all devices. When I first started using LastPass, you could only access it on the desktops. You had to pay to get the apps, but now that's even free. So that's even better. So for one person like myself, I do have the premium, and I've been paying, I guess it's gone up now to $3 a month instead of $2 a month. Oh, darn. Which, by the way, these tools are cheap. Yeah. These tools are $3 a month just don't go to Starbucks one time a month.
Right.
And you're fine. You paid for it,
Correct. And the families is $4 a month.
Yeah.
They haven't gone up recently, and that's 6 users.
Yeah.
That's
me,
crazy
it's cheap. I mean, the free account would work. I do like having the emergency access, the multi-factor. I need to look into that, actually. LastPass for applications. That's the big one right there.
And LastPass
for Windows machines. So
LastPass for business, because everything from for teams is like for small business, 50 people or less is $4 a user per month, which is reasonable for a tool like this. And then it goes up from there to like enterprise, MFA, identity. I mean, they have some pretty sophisticated top level password things like that. That's really beyond the scope of what we can talk about, but like biometric authentication and all kinds of stuff. But really high level.
For me, one of the reasons I have premium, not just because of the issues of multiple uses, using it multiple places and everything like that. I want to support them. Yes, I could use it for free, but again, $3 a month, $36 a year to support them for this wonderful tool.
And I think if you support them, it keeps the price lower. The more people that aren't using the free tier.
So 1Password is $3 a month. It doesn't have a free tier, but it starts at $3 a month, and it gives you pretty much everything. You get the whole shebang, and then because the next tier is 1Password Families, which is $5 for up to 5 people. So instead of 6, it's 5. When all my kids are on it, I may end up having to do like a business account. But it gets up to 5 guests for sharing. You can share passwords, credit cards, secure notes. You can manage what family members can see and do. And importantly, you can recover accounts for locked out family members. That's a big one. But everything, you get unlimited devices. You get 1Password Watchtower. I didn't mention that already, but Watchtower is an security auditing feature where it connects with a website called Pwn to Own, which keeps track of when websites get compromised. And it will tell you what Watchtower is inside 1Password will tell you these passwords are 3 years old or older. Consider changing them. These passwords are not all that secure. They're too short. You've used this password in more than one place. And, this password on this site was compromised. You should change this password right away.
Right.
So really nice. But LastPass has a security auditing feature called Security Challenge.
Security Challenge.
What's that
Does
about?
so much the same. Now, I don't know if they do the compromised sites. I think
they do.
Oh, they do it now. Okay.
Do. Yeah, I ran it before we started, and it found one of my email addresses had 4 exposures, and it tells you exactly where and exactly when, so that you can go back and change the password in these sites.
Okay.
So it must be something that as I look at them right now, I say, one of them I don't even use anymore, and it must have, and there's one that's an unknown source, which means I don't think I did that. So I know this particular Gmail account has to be changed now.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like similar then. Yeah.
Right, but it'll also give you the other ones. You've used this one 2 times, you've used this one 4 times, please change. Or if it's weak, if you've got duplicate, compromised, weak, old, it's been yelling at me for the past 2 months saying, you need to change your master password. I'm like, oh, no, I can't do that to my husband.
Right.
That won't work. I like the way it details it for you.
Yep.
And then it will let you launch the site from here. That's one thing about the Vault. You can actually go to whatever site you want to go to, and it will launch it in a browser of your choice. Yep. You don't have to go to the browser and then launch it. You can launch it from the Vault itself.
So I think that kind of covers it. I mean, if there's anything we didn't cover that folks would have specific questions on, please feel free to email us. We're technology@sqpn.com, or go to the SQPN Facebook page and drop a comment or a question and let us know. We'll try to do our best to give you our point of view and what we think or what we know about it. We will put some links to, of course, to LastPass and 1Password. We have no financial stake in either one. Whatever you choose.
Other than we're giving them money.
Right. If you do business with these companies, it means that it helps them stay in business, which is good for us because we like their tools. I suppose that's the most stake we have in it. I'll also link to some articles that also do some head-to-head comparisons that might be useful as well. They might have hit on some things that we didn't, or reinforce some of the things we said. So you check those out. Those will be on our website in the show notes. And I think that's good. Any last things on 1Password versus LastPass?
I think it has to be your comfort level. Try them both, and whatever your comfort level is for you and your family, that's the one you go with.
Yep, they both
Exactly.
have trial versions. So and they
Well,
live
one of
comfortably
them's free,
side
the
by
other's
side.
trial. So
Yeah, right. They live comfortably side by side. So you could be running them simultaneously if you want for a period of time. Although you have to disable one of the browser extensions when you settle on one because they both always want to keep popping up. Just ask me how I know that. So I do want to move on quickly to our picks of the week, but before I do, there's just a headline that came out today that I want to make sure that we get out to folks who are listening. You'll probably be listening to this a day after we've recorded this, but Apple has sent out some critical security patches for all their devices, Mac, iOS, iPadOS, and iWatch, for the Apple Watch too. I got an update as well. They've patched up some bugs. I think they're almost entirely bug fixes, but whatever this security fix.
Kernel bugs.
Kernel bugs are bad, so
that's why they're doing it for all the devices, because kind of under the cover, Mac OS, iOS, iPadOS, iWatchOS all use the same basic kernel.
Yes, and so they're all
since Mac 10 came out. I mean,
right.
So it's.
And Apple tends to push out the patch as soon as they have it, as soon as they can, which is why they're doing it. So they've just pushed all those out to all the devices. So that's run your updates, and you should be fine. I've already done it for everything except my watch.
This is a particularly nasty set of bugs where they can get. We're talking about like these password managers where they decrypt the data on your computer. Well, you could have, in theory, some of these. You could have an app on your Mac can go in there and grab that data, even though the iOS or the operating system is supposed to be preventing that from happening.
Right. So
that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And I'm still running Mavericks on my Mac, and it updated. It got a security patch there too. So this is for all Macs that are currently supported, all operating systems that are currently supported. They go back several levels, but it's another reason why you want to stay fairly up to date on your operating systems. It's just the world we live in now. You can become vulnerable if you try to run old operating systems for too long. Yeah,
if you're on Windows 10, make sure you do the security updates when they do them. Same thing with Mac OS, same thing with Android, iOS, all of them.
And that's why Microsoft stopping support for Windows 7 is a big deal. That's another story that's out there too. All right, let's get things rolling to the end by doing our picks of the week. One of my
fun
favorite
stuff.
Yeah, one of my favorite parts of the show. And so let's start with you, Joanne. What's your pick of the week?
Well, I have finally cut the cord. We know the whole saga from last year where I didn't, but we finally did. And I am suggesting for everyone's approval, YouTube TV. I really have found it to be the best streaming method for at least my family, but it's just the way it is set up. The grid is beautifully laid out. You can catch your local channels as well as a good selection of the streaming cable channels that have floated around. My local channels actually are CBS, ABC, NBC, PBS. Finally made it on there. And believe it or not, New England Cable News.
Oh, wow.
They weren't on there last year, showed up 2 weeks ago.
How about Fox, local Fox channel?
I don't know. You're in a different part of the same area as I am.
Right.
In my district, I'm getting everything coming out of Providence.
Okay.
So you would probably get everything coming out of Boston.
That's right.
More than likely. So you get the Fox channel that's local to you. I get the Fox channel that's local to me. Things like, however, MyRI TV or like those Me TV things, they don't show up on any of these streaming devices.
Okay.
So my antenna is taking care of that. But YouTube TV, it's $50 a month. You get 6 members. You can have 6 members on it, 3 at a time, streaming at a time, 6 different DVRs. They hold it for 9 months.
Wow.
Except the CBS, because they have all access, will only let you hold it for maybe 30 days.
Okay.
And then they take it off. But that's because they have that. Who knows what's going to happen when Peacock comes in or, and starts doing that. But I think it's a pretty fair value if you're looking for something that takes both local and cable-ish type channels and puts them in a really nice place. My husband needed the golf channel, so there you go.
Well, when you need to take a nap in the afternoon, that's
well, yeah, he's a golfer,
Exactly.
and you know, we've paired it with one other, and of course we have CBS All Access and the cheap Hulu and that kind of stuff. So we're so far. He said, you know, this wasn't such a bad transition. I'm like, yes,
that's good.
Thank you.
And what are you doing for internet provider for your internet pipe?
Guess what? Verizon, $39.99 a month.
39. Interesting. What do you get? How fast is that? 39.99.
100 up, 100 down.
Wow.
I'm jealous.
So that would
in fiber.
Wow. That would be less than what I'm paying now for 100 up, 100 down and cable. Maybe that cord cutting's in my future.
I'll talk to you about it later.
Yeah.
So, great. That's a great pick, Joanne. Thank you very much. Father Cory, what's your pick of the week?
So my pick actually kind of sort of ties in with Joanne, especially for cord cutters. There's a certain ball game coming up here this coming weekend. You might have heard of it. Something super about it. It might be held in a bowl. Of course, I'm not going to use the official name because you might get trademarked. No, obviously the Super Bowl is coming up this weekend. And yes, you could watch it on YouTube TV. You could watch it on antenna if you're a cord cutter like I am, and I probably will all watch it off of antenna. But if you're going to be traveling, if you don't have an antenna, you don't have this ability, the NFL app is a great way that you will be able to watch it. I've been checking for sure.
Yeah.
But if you're not familiar, the NFL app came out 4 or 5 years ago.
Yep.
And it was a Verizon only thing first. Or you could get the app on any, Android phone, iOS device. But to watch live football, you had to be on Verizon. Well, a couple of years ago, they switched that now to anybody on any mobile device, whether via Wi-Fi or cellular, can watch most live games. Of course, now we're the end of the season, so this will be until next season. You'll have to wait till next season. But you can watch most live games on your device. You can't put them on a TV. You can't do things like that, but you can still watch it on your device. Well, the Super Bowl will be on the app, and it will be live streamed on the app.
Wow.
But
Very
if you're
cool.
also a football junkie, that's not the only thing they have there. Of course, they've got the games, and they've got the scores and the stats and everything. They also have news items. They've got NFL TV, all these different media sources and all this
NFL
different information.
Yeah.
Just film all over the place. I mean, it really is a lot of stuff. If you're like a super football junkie, you probably will live in this app. And
Nice.
like I said, though, it's also just going to be a good way to watch the Super Bowl if you're not going to be able to go to a sports bar or watch it, at home on antenna or cable or whatever. It's another option. So check it out. Like I said, if you're a football junkie or you just need to watch the Super Bowl.
So I'm a little confused, Father Cory. They still play the Super Bowl if the Patriots aren't in it?
They're doubly celebrating it, the fact that the Patriots aren't in it and that Tom Brady probably won't be a Patriot next season. Oh, did I say that out loud?
Dom, not everybody is us.
I know.
Okay,
Those people are
us.
better than you. No, I'm kidding.
Oh.
I had to throw that out there. I had to throw it out there. Be the obnoxious Patriots fan. Thank you for
Actually, this is going to be the Joe Montana Super Bowl. Because Joe Montana played for both teams. So
That's right.
true.
He did.
But
Jimmy Garoppolo is our boy, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm kind of rooting for Jimmy G.
I'm a San Fran fan right now.
I've always had a soft spot for San Francisco because I grew up during the Joe Montana, Jerry Rice,
yeah, exactly.
Steve Young era.
Oh yeah.
So
and plus Tom Brady's team when he was a kid.
There you go.
All right, so let's leave the world of sports and our obnoxious sports fandom, and I want to talk about an app that's out now. That Joanne, now that you have an iPhone 11, this is for you as well. So back last year at WWDC, at last September, at the Apple event introducing the new iPhone 11, I think it was. It might have been WWDC. Never mind. But in any case, Apple had brought up this company called Filmic to show off the capability of recording video using all the cameras on the phone at once. So, for example, you can set it up so that it will use the selfie camera, the regular camera, and I have the iPhone 11 Pro, so it's got the wide angle and the telephoto, all 4 cameras at once recording, and you can switch between them. It will record separate streams that are time-coded so that you can then mix them in a video app like Audition, Adobe Premiere or Final Cut, Final Cut, and you could then mix them together. So you could do an interview, for instance, with someone, a face-to-face interview just with your iPhone, and you get the interviewer's face, you get the interviewee's face, and it's all recorded on one iPhone at a time. At the time, it is an app called Double Take, and best of all, it is free. So at first we thought, yeah, exactly.
Done.
At first we thought you'd have to buy the iFilmic Pro app, which is, by the way, an amazing app if you are into video. Like it is a professional video app on your phone. So if you have any need for that sort of thing, definitely. But it's free for everyone in this Double Take app, and you have to have either an iPhone 11, one of the iPhone 11 models, Max and regular, Pro and regular. The iPhone XS's, so last year's iPhone top end ones, or the iPhone XR. Those are the ones that have the CPU power to do all of the cameras at once. I mean, I was
going to say goodbye battery if you're recording. That's for sure.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I'm going to guess you're not going to get a long battery life out of it. You'll probably want a battery pack. But I'm going to test it out and see how much I can record with it, because it's really super cool to have that ability to have the options. I mean, not so much the selfie thing, but I like the idea of being able to record both a regular field view and a wide angle view and a telephoto view all at once. Which can make, like, if you're doing like a video, just one view all the time can get kind of boring for the viewer. Mm-hmm. Switching it up can be kind of fun and interesting if you don't overdo it. So
I've always wanted to do the interview thing, so just downloaded it. This is going to be fun. Yeah. I'm interested to see how this works out in the long run, and see how people use it. All right, so those are our picks of the week. I want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Secrets of Technology, including Devin W., Travis R., Rocco F., Mitchell F., and Justin S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology in all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. All right, so that's it from us. What do you think of our discussion of password managers? Do you have a password manager we didn't talk about, and is it better? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you about why you chose what you did choose, or if you have any other questions about password managers. You can comment on the show at sqpn.com/technology, or the SQPN Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send us an email to technology@sqpn.com. You can find links from our discussion and picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com as well. If you can do so, I would really, really, really appreciate it if you could write us a review in Apple Podcasts or one of the podcast directories, and then share the podcast with your friends to help us grow the community of listeners. If you think what we do adds value to your life and value to the community of podcast listeners, we would appreciate it if you would help us spread the word. Until next time, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me in sharing the secrets of technology.
Yeah, glad to be here, and thank you, Dom.
And Joanne Mercier, thank you as well.
Always happy to be here. Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.